Alrighty, welcome to another awesome lesson of Pro Mandarin. So you're probably thinking, did you break it? And who fixed it? And when was it done? Or perhaps you're wondering, who owns this restaurant? Well, I'm going to teach you how to talk about all this with the 是 and 的 method. But first you're probably wondering, can I learn all this Chinese in one lesson? Well, let's find out. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start with 是 and 的. Alright, so this sentence structure is one of those that we call something like a bookend structure, where it surrounds the main portion of the phrase that we're concerned about. And there's quite a few different ways that we can use this, and I'm actually going to be spending a few different lessons talking about this and giving different examples. So with that, let's go ahead and add in a couple things that we may be concerned about. First is 什么时候. This means when, as in you're asking when something happened. So 什么 is what, and 时候 means time, or is also a reference to time. But they don't mean what time as in what time is it, more of what time should we meet, or in other words, when should we meet, or something like that. Or as in, when did this thing actually take place? When did something happen? And then the next one is 谁, and as you see, it could be pronounced 谁 or 谁. I've heard it both ways, but most of the time I hear it as 谁, and that's the way I pronounce it, which means who. So we're wondering about the action that had happened, who did it, or who did what to what thing. And let's go ahead and add in what those things are on the left. So the first word is 这, which means this, and then we got 那, which means that. Now we could say 这是 or 那是 all by itself, as in this is or that is. But if we want to add in any words, we need to know what a classifier is. So if someone said, give me a toilet paper, you might kind of think, well, that sounds a little weird. But if they said, give me a roll of toilet paper, then you might go, okay, yeah, that makes a little more sense. Now, what if they said, I just need a couple squares of toilet paper? Then you might start thinking, well, I just can't spare a square. Now, in Chinese, every noun has a classifier. Now, if you don't know the correct one, you can always use ge instead. For the most part, it won't be as clear what you mean by it, though, sometimes. So we could say 这个 means this, and 那个 means that, all by itself. And then what we would do is we'd say the noun right after that. However, all nouns have a classifier. So 台 would be a classifier for things like 车, which is vehicles. So in this case, if you say 这台车, you'd be saying this vehicle or this car. And of course, a lot of you are probably thinking, well, what about 辆 for 车? Well, that's correct too. But for today's lesson, we're going to go ahead and use 台, which can be interchangeably used with 辆 when you're talking about 车. Now, 台can also be used for other nouns such as 电视, which is television. So again, 这台车, this vehicle or this car, and 那台车, that vehicle or that car. And then we got 这台电视, which is this television, and then 那台电视, that television. Now, with both of these, you could actually just say ge if you didn't remember tai was the correct classifier for that. So let me go ahead and give you one more classifier here, which is ba. And it's used for things that are like objects that you can hold it with your hand, or it has handles or something along those lines. So for instance, you might use it for something like 一把叉子, or a fork, or how about a spoon, 一把匙, or you could say 一把勺. And you can also use it for 一把刀, which is a knife. Now, for today's lesson, we're going to use it for 椅子, which is a chair, and 吉他, which is a guitar. So again, you could say 这把椅子, which means this chair, or you could say 那把吉他, which would be that guitar. And again, you can also say 这个椅子, this chair, or 那个吉他, that guitar. However, ba would be the correct classifier for these nouns. Now with that, let's talk about the things that you can do to these things. First, we got 买, which means to buy. And then we got 开, which means to open, to turn on, or it could even mean to drive. Now, I'll show you how that works in just a minute. So the next one is 弄坏. So 弄坏 means to break it. So 弄 means to do something or to make something, and 坏 means that it's bad. So 弄坏 would mean to make it bad or to break it. So that could be a vehicle or, I don't know, a bottle or something like that. All right, and then the last one I put 修好. Now, you could say 修 all by itself, but one of the things about saying 修 is that you're saying to fix or to repair, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it was in fact fixed or completed. You could ask who fixed this, as in who tried to fix this and failed to fix it, like the thing's still broken, right? For example, 这台电视是谁修的？屏幕怎么打不开呢? Or in other words, who's working on this TV? How come the screen won't turn on? A quick little note about the na. You could say it or you could leave it out. Either way, it'll mean the same thing. It just kind of changes the expression a little bit. More of like a difference in the tone of voice is all it is. Now, let me give you another couple examples here just for the fun of it. So I could also say 屏幕怎么不亮呢? 屏幕怎么不亮呢? So I'd be saying, how come the screen won't light up, right? Or I could say 怎么没有声音? Or 怎么没有声音呢? That'd be like, how come there's no sound? Now, when you say 修好, you're saying that it's actually fixed. It's done and it's completed, okay? So this 好 is used at the end of some verbs to denote that something has been completed. All right, now let's go ahead and get a couple examples in. With this sentence structure, if you wanted to say, when was this bought? And it could be anything, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. You could say, 这个是什么时候买的? 这个是什么时候买的? Now, you could actually take out the ge, and this would actually make you sound a little bit more native, because if there isn't a noun right after 这 or na, they're just going to say 是 most of the time. They're not going to use any classifiers. But if there is a noun, they will put some kind of classifier just before it when they're using 这 or na, okay? So, in this case, you'd more likely hear 这是什么时候买的? 这是什么时候买的? Now, what about if you wanted to say who drives this car? You could say 这台车是谁开的? 这台车是谁开的? But it might be a little more common to say something like 这台车是谁的? 这台车是谁的? And in this case, you're not saying who drives this car. Instead, you're just saying whose car is this? All right, so let's go ahead and get a little practice in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a few seconds to answer the question for yourself. And if you need a little bit more time, go ahead and pause the video. So with that, how would you say, who bought that guitar? 那把吉他是谁买的? 那把吉他是谁买的? Or alternatively, you could just say, 那个吉他是谁买的? 那个吉他是谁买的? All right, cool. So with that, how would you say, who broke that television? 那台电视是谁弄坏的? 那台电视是谁弄坏的? Now, honestly, I would use a different sentence structure normally with this one, and either one is fine because they both mean the same thing, but I would use the ba structure with that, which takes the noun and puts it right before the verb. So for instance, 谁把电视弄坏了? 谁把电视弄坏了? Now, I do teach this ba in other lessons. However, you could also say it this way too. 谁弄坏了电视? 谁弄坏了电视? So it'd mean, who broke the television? Now, with all of these, in this sentence structure, you could leave off the object or the noun that's in front of 是. You could just say, 是谁弄坏的? So in that case, you already know that we're talking about the television, and you're just asking, who broke it? That's it, okay? So there are ways of using this sentence structure than explaining everything. And a lot of times that's exactly what they do. They don't say the noun. All right, so let's go ahead and do two more questions before we move on to the next section. So how would you say, when was the chair fixed? 椅子是什么时候修好的? 椅子是什么时候修好的? Now you may have noticed that I didn't say 这把椅子 or 那把椅子 or anything like that. That's because I said the chair. Now you could say this chair or that chair, but instead I just left it off. And since there is no definite article in Chinese, in other words, there is no word the, so you just say the noun and then that's it. So let's try one more real quick. And let's do the same thing here for the next one. When was the guitar broken? Or when did the guitar break? So how would you say that? 吉他是什么时候弄坏的? 吉他是什么时候弄坏的? But of course you can always say 那把吉他是什么时候弄坏的? Or 那个吉他是什么时候弄坏的? So either which way, you're basically saying the same thing. You're just saying this guitar, that guitar, or the guitar, okay? All right, cool. So let's go ahead and move on to the next part of the lesson. But before we do that, if you haven't done so already, make sure you like and subscribe, which really helps me out so that I can continue to make quality content like this video. All right, now back to the lesson. All right, to start off the second part of this lesson, we're going to take out all the nouns, or all the objects anyway, and then we're also going to take out all the verbs except for one, which is going to be kai, and we're going to add in jia as the classifier, and then we're going to add in shangdian. Now, you could say shangdian in combination with zhejia or najia, but it's more commonly not used, where normally you just say zhejia dian. So what this means is this store. So shangdian means store, and then fandian means restaurant. It's the dian that has rice in it or food in it, okay? So when we're talking about restaurants, this is one way of saying it, is fandian. So again, instead of saying zhejia shangdian, we could say zhejia dian for this store, and then zhejia fandian for this restaurant. Now, we could also use 这个 or 那个 for this or that when we're talking about stores and restaurants. However, 家 would be the correct classifier for it. Now, again, we took out all those verbs because when we're talking about 这家饭店 or something along those lines, we're going to use 开 or 开业. And we could use some other characters, which I'll show you in just a second, to help us describe what's happening or what's being done with this store. But I want to talk about this just for a second. So first, if we're going to say kai, the rule here is that we're going to use shay. And what we're saying is not who opens the store like every morning or anything like that, but who owns the store actually. So who opened the store was the one that owns the store. And then if we're going to use kaiye, which means that it's an opening of the store, we're going to say 什么时候, as in when did this happen? When did this store open? Now, there's various ways to say when does the store open rather than when was it opened or when did it start in business. But the most common way that you usually hear is 开门, or in other words, open door. So if I were to say, when does this store open? I could say something like 这家店什么时候开门? 这家店什么时候开门? So when does this store open? And likewise, I could also say, when does it close its doors? By saying 这家店什么时候关门? 这家店什么时候关门? Which would be, when does this store close? Now, going back to what we're using here, how would you say who opened the store? Or in other words, who owns this store? 这家店是谁开的? 这家店是谁开的? And of course, you could also say 这个店是谁开的? 这个店是谁开的? Which would also mean who owns this store as well. Now, how would you say, when was that restaurant opened? Or when did that restaurant open? As in, maybe it's a brand new restaurant. I just barely seen it for the first time. So how would you say that? 那家饭店是什么时候开业的? 那家饭店是什么时候开业的? So I hope that you found this lesson very helpful, and you may have also noticed that I highlighted it in a different color for the second part of the lesson. If you like the new color, please let me know down in the comments below. Or if you didn't like the new color, if you like the original kind of off-white yellowish color, whichever one that you liked, or maybe you have another color that you would like to select, just let me know what you feel is most comfortable, and we'll see if we can go with that one, and we'll take it to a vote. Whichever gets 30 votes first wins. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, go ahead and 点赞、订阅和分享这个视频. Or in other words, like, subscribe, and share this video. And until next time, 下次见.